If your team publishes constantly across LinkedIn, email, and webinars but still sounds interchangeable, the issue is rarely volume or frequency. It is thought leadership, and most B2B companies define it so loosely that they drain it of value before they even hit publish, review distribution, or test whether buyers learned anything specific. You hear the phrase everywhere, from agency decks to founder posts, yet buyers still scroll past most so-called expert content in seconds. That opens two questions. What actually makes an idea worth following, and why do companies with deep expertise, large datasets, and years of customer access often sound the most generic, cautious, and forgettable? For B2B teams, weak thought leadership does more than waste impressions or reduce engagement rates on a dashboard. It delays trust. And in long sales cycles, where evaluation can stretch 6 to 9 months, delayed trust means slower pipeline, softer pricing power, longer proof demands, and more dependence on outbound just to start conversations that should have come inbound. Many teams treat thought leadership as a format, usually a LinkedIn post from a founder or maybe a branded webinar series. But it is not a format. It is a market-facing point of view, delivered consistently over time, backed by proof, and useful enough that buyers remember who said it, repeat it internally, and attach your brand to the insight. Thought leadership is expert insight that changes how your buyer sees a problem, a decision, or a future outcome, especially when money, timing, and career risk are involved. Notice the standard here. The content does not merely inform, summarize trends, or recycle best practices from a conference talk. It reframes. It gives your audience language, patterns, and evidence they can use inside real buying conversations with colleagues, budgets, procurement, and risk sitting in the same room asking hard questions about trade-offs. B2B deals involve multiple stakeholders, longer timelines, and higher perceived risk than most consumer purchases. That means your content often sells before your salesperson speaks, because finance, operations, and an executive sponsor may all form impressions from your ideas weeks earlier. The term grows popular as social platforms reward personality, speed, and visible individual brands, but the practice is older than the feed. Analysts, consultants, and niche operators have shaped markets for decades by teaching buyers how to think, not just what to purchase, often through reports, keynotes, and category-defining frameworks. What changes is distribution. LinkedIn, newsletters, podcasts, and webinars compress distance between operator and audience in a way trade magazines never could. Now your company can publish directly, daily if needed, but that also means weak ideas become visible faster than ever, and audiences compare them against stronger peers in the same scroll. The difference is not polish, production value, or whether the design team added clean carousels and captions. It is usefulness under uncertainty. One helps buyers navigate a hard decision with clearer judgment. The other simply fills a content calendar, checks a box, and disappears from memory by next Tuesday. Start with expertise, but define it narrowly. Expertise is not your company mission, vision, or a broad claim like helping businesses grow. It is the specific terrain where your team sees patterns earlier than the market because you work the problem repeatedly with real customers, across dozens of calls, implementations, and postmortems. Then add evidence. Evidence means examples, field notes, customer language, mistakes, benchmarks, and trade-offs, not just a polished opinion with confident wording. Without evidence, your point of view feels borrowed. With evidence, it starts sounding lived in and therefore credible, because buyers can hear where the claim came from and what it cost to learn. Then comes viewpoint. A viewpoint is your interpretation of the evidence, not the evidence by itself. It explains why something matters now, what most teams miss, and what action follows next quarter, not someday. This is where original framing separates experts from commentators, because commentary observes while viewpoint helps buyers decide. Strong thought leadership usually combines 3 ingredients at once, not one in isolation. Repeated exposure to the problem. Direct evidence from the field. A clear interpretation that helps buyers make better decisions, faster, under real constraints like budget caps, hiring gaps, and political risk inside the account. Here is where many B2B teams go sideways. They outsource insight instead of extracting it from the people closest to reality. A writer interviews a leader for 20 minutes, then turns general observations into polished content that no buyer could distinguish from 10 competitors, because the raw specifics, tension, and proof never made it into the draft. If a competitor can swap in their logo without changing the meaning, the examples, or the buyer takeaway, it is not thought leadership yet. Originality in B2B is often overrated in the wrong way. You do not need a never-before-seen theory or some dramatic contrarian slogan. You need a sharper synthesis, a clearer pattern, or a more useful explanation than your audience currently has, especially one grounded in current buying behavior rather than abstract industry chatter. Imagine your agency serves SaaS teams. Generic content says, post consistently on LinkedIn, maybe 3 to 5 times a week. Thought leadership says founder content underperforms when it reports activity, but outperforms when it narrates decisions, trade-offs, and lessons from live execution, like pricing changes, churn fixes, or hiring bets that taught something costly. Notice what happens. You move from advice to mechanism, which is a much more durable form of persuasion. Buyers understand not just what to do, but why one approach changes outcomes. Mechanism is persuasive because it reduces uncertainty, which is the hidden tax in every B2B purchase, whether the line item is software, services, or headcount. Generic content often looks cheaper to produce, especially when measured by cost per asset, but it creates expensive second-order effects, lower trust, weaker recall, and more pressure on paid distribution. In practice, that can mean higher CAC, longer nurture windows, and repeated explaining from sales just to rebuild confidence. Another mistake is separating thought leadership from distribution as if insight and channel live in different departments. The best idea still needs a native format. A founder post is different from a case study. A webinar is different from a carousel. The core insight stays, the packaging adapts to how attention works in each environment. For many B2B teams, LinkedIn is the front door because buyers, peers, partners, and talent all overlap there at the same time. But the platform rewards clarity and relevance, not just confidence or hot takes. Strong posts carry one sharp idea and one clear reason to care now, often in the first 2 lines. Case studies matter because they are compressed evidence. They show context, constraint, action, and result in a way generic tips cannot. When mined properly, they also generate the raw material for thought leadership by revealing patterns across many customer situations, including what failed first, what changed, and why the fix worked. The posts people save are usually not the loudest, funniest, or most aggressively self-promotional in the feed. They are the ones that help someone explain a decision to a boss, a client, or a team, using language that travels into meetings and budget reviews. Here is the counterintuitive part. Thought leadership is not primarily about proving how smart you are, how much jargon you know, or how many trends you can name. It is about making your buyer feel smarter, safer, and more prepared to act. That is why educational generosity often outperforms self-promotion, even when reach looks lower at first. A post can go broad and still create little business value, especially if the audience is mostly peers, creators, or students outside your market. Another can reach fewer people yet influence the exact operators who shape budget and vendor selection. In B2B, precision often beats scale because the market is smaller, the committee is narrower, and